We did quite extensive surveys in 2016 from Alberta, Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and really looking wherever peas and lentils are grown and trying to get a handle on what the distribution of Aphanomyces root rot is across these areas. When we look at our disease severity rating scale, we rate on a scale of 1, 2 and 3, we consider those plants healthy. 4 and 5, we consider them to have a moderate disease severity, and then 6 and 7, we're looking at very severe disease, and at that point we would start to see that those shoots are showing an impact and you probably get a lot of yield loss. So when we look at incidence of disease in Alberta with roots that had kind of a moderate or severe severity, we saw an average about maybe 20 to 30% incidence of moderate severe root rots. That was much higher in Saskatchewan, where we saw about 50 to 60% of those incidents of root rots. With the Aphanomyces, what we find with this pathogen, it is a water mold, so it's a pathogen that is highly dependent on moisture. And so we find that it can infect a plant at any point in the growing season as long as there is sufficient moisture in that field. So if rains come later in the season, maybe into July and August, as soon as you get those soil saturated levels, you can have Aphanomyces infect. What we find with Fusarium is that it particularly infects better at the early seedling stage, usually at that point of seeding attachment, and then that damage compounds over the season so that you might see more severe symptoms during flowering. But it doesn't seem to be able to infect kind of older plants as well as Aphanomyces does. And this translates a little bit to differences in yield impact. So right now we're in the very early stages of research trying to figure out what some of those control options might be. So the current recommendation is that if you've had a history of root rots or noticed the last time you grew peas or lentils in a field that there was some yellowing patches starting to show up, the recommendation would be to get either your roots tested or soil tested for presence of Aphanomyces, and most of the commercial seed testing labs offer that test. If the test comes back indicating that you do have Aphanomyces present, then we recommend extending your rotation away from a susceptible host crop, so that would be peas or lentils, for 6 to 8 years. The resting spores of Aphanomyces can survive in the soil for a very long time, so we want to try and extend those rotations so that you have time for that inoculum level to reduce. There is no effective in-crop fungicide, so I know oftentimes when a producer notices these yellowing patches, kind of their first reaction is to spray a fungicide thinking that is a disease issue, but spraying a fungicide on the shoots does not have any impact on the roots because fungicide chemistries just don't move down the plant that way. The other thing that we would recommend is consider using a seed treatment if you know that you've had a history of root rots, and use a seed treatment that's going to target the entire root rot complex, so Aphanomyces, Fusarium and Pythium. But seed treatments only provide an early season protection, about 4 to 5 weeks. They're not going to protect against those infections that might come later on in the growing season.